resilience and cultural pride that defined the Botswana people's fight for their land and dignity. Now, this discussion will explore how the festival strengthens national identity, fosters inter-tribal solidarity, and educates younger generation about the sacrifice of their ancestors and the struggle against the colonial aggression. Now, this afternoon we are joined by a historian, Dr. Jeff Ramsay, to look into this history. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on Botswana Television.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Now let's start a conversation. Let's track back and try to understand the Dimawe battle, the significance that it holds until right now.
Well, the battle took place on August 30th, 1852. And it was the first battle and the most important battle in what was a larger war, because the war itself lasted from August 1852 to March 1853. So over 6 months of fighting took place. Now, the war itself began with the invasion of what today we know as Botswana by Boer commando numbering over 1,000, including indigenous auxiliaries as well as Boers, or white Afrikaners as they are today. And why were they invading? Well, prior to the battle, Botswana here in Botswana, southeast Botswana, had been building up their power by trading ivory and other game products for guns, and also welcoming refugees from what is today South Africa, because the Boers had been enslaving indigenous Africans across what is now the border. And when we keep talking about the border, actually the border we have today with South Africa to the east, along the Limpopo River, Notwani River, Madikwe River, that border is actually a product of the war. So that's one of the important aspects of this. So what happened? Well, a group of Botswana Marafes started to resist. The key leader in this was Kgosi Oscar, the first of the Bakwena, but he had an alliance which involved the Baka, Bangwaketse, Bakgatla Bahamanana. And the Boers initially attacked the Bakgatla Bahamanana, who were then in Manyana, near Dinokana today. Seeing that they couldn't really resist the commando, which came with, artillery, like I said, 1,000. It was one of the largest Boer commandos ever. They retreated back and joined Sechele and the Bangwaketse and the Baka initially at Dimawe. When the Boers arrived on a Saturday, there was an agreement to have a ceasefire. So on Sunday, there was no fighting. And this is interesting because some of the Boers actually went to the prayer services on Sunday joining Botswana, which were led by a guy named Reverend Mbawe. He was a Mutswana Moruti. Be that as it may, there had been back and forth. The Boers demanded that Sechele surrender Mosielele, the Kgosi of the Bakgatla Bahamanana, and otherwise accept that he would be under the rule of the Transvaal Boers, of Andres Pretorius being their leader at that time, and that the Bakwena and the other Botswana groups should disarm. They refused. There was much back and forth, but I think we're limited in time. But they did note that they had a cannon just like the Boers. And so on Monday, the battle broke out. At the beginning of the battle, the village was burned, but the Bakwena and their allies held their ground around the hills, Botswana Hill, Dimawe Hill, and the other hills, which can be collectively known as Dimawe Hill.
All right.
Hills, yeah.
Definitely. Maybe let's take it to our context this day. What is the significance? How long did the war last, and what's the significance of this war, especially to the people of Manyana?
Well, as the war progressed, more groups joined in. Many of the Bahurutshe joined in the battle itself, because some had been impressed into service with the Boers. And then under Linswe, the son of Mangope, they joined the other side. But as the war progressed, we have the Batlhaping, the Balete, various Bahurutshe groups coming in, the Bangwaketse coming in, Barolong in particular. So there were other skirmishes, but on September 30th, after the battle was a one-day battle, and at the end of the day, 36 Boers had been killed and about 90 Botswana. But what made it different from all the other battles that the Boers had ever had with Africans up until then is the Botswana had guns, including the cannon, but also various rifles. And so No, it was the first time the Boers felt this. Is the first time the Boers had such big casualties. For example, when they fought the Zulu at Blood River only a few years earlier, no Boers were killed, and over 3,000 Zulu were slaughtered because it was guns against assegai and shields. So the battle was a standoff. After the battle, the Bangwaketse, Bakwena, and other groups regrouped at Kanye and at Ditubaruba, which is near Mulipololi. The Boers went to those places, but in the end, they didn't have big battles. They had a small skirmish at Kanye. But on September 3rd, they decided to withdraw. They had taken heavy losses, so they decided to go home. So the next 5 months, the war shifted to what we today know as South Africa. Various Botswana groups that we've mentioned rose up and started burning Boer farms and forced the Boers ultimately to pull back to what today we know as Rustenburg and Potchefstroom. So finally in February there was a ceasefire, and there was off and on skirmishes thereafter. But by 1857, the Boers and the Botswana had what we could call a peace agreement, and prior to that, a ceasefire agreement. So what does this mean? Well, first of all, the boundary, like I said, that we have today with South Africa was established then. It's a pre-colonial boundary. The Botswana groups of modern-day Botswana had come together to secure the land which today we know as Botswana. And when we look at the villages, the settlement in southeast of our country, when we look at villages like Mulipololi, but prior to that, Ditubaruba, but also Manyana, Mankodi, Tamaha, Moshupa, Khabani, Machudi, where the Bakgatla Bahakafela later on came and joined, Ramutswa, and so forth. You see that these are products of the war, the products of the resettlement in the aftermath of this war.
Right, that's incredible. Now, how important is to commemorate such histories?
Well, I believe this is really Botswana's liberation struggle. Some people think we didn't have a liberation struggle, but like the Basotho, we had an early liberation struggle. We fought against the Boers in the 1800s, and thereafter it was a matter of securing what had been gained in the 1800s. So in that sense, I see it as a seminal event in the creation of Botswana. But the festival is going to go beyond that. Not only is it going to be bringing in Botswana from Botswana, but also from across the border. There has been a growth in recent years of interest in the war in South Africa as well. Also seeing it as part of their liberation struggle, of their history, because it is a shared history. And so even last year when the festival was held, we had delegations from South Africa as well as from across Botswana. Now I should say that the festival itself started with the Manyana Cultural Trust led by Kgosi Mosielele, and it's since expanded. There's been greater outreach with the new districts at Tamaha and Moshupa, outreach to the different royal families, both in Botswana and in South Africa. So it's become a major cultural event, a growing one. This will be the second one, but like I say, in the meetings that they've been having, they've already, South African delegations have been coming to join in the organizing.
Botswana. All right, that's incredible. Now, looking at, as you're saying, this is the second one that will be happening on the 23rd of this month. What is the main objective at the end of the day? What is it that they aim to achieve?
It is to celebrate culture, collective culture. It is to celebrate the heroism, the sacrifices that secured Botswana as we know it today. Celebrating the bravery and really the beginnings of Botswana nationalism. But it's also, like I say, become a shared event. It's seen now as part of Southern Africa's history, Southern Africa's long struggle against colonialism and white settler hegemony, as well as slavery.
All right, now how can we make use of such festivals to teach, especially coming up generations or young ones, about history and make them part of it to keep it alive, not only in books, but in their lives?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, to be honest, we could do more to teach about the Botswana-Boer War and the Battle of Dimawe in our schools, I believe. But be that as it may, events like this do remind us. And again, they do it in a way that's not just in a textbook or in a text, but bringing it to life.
Yeah.
And also it's a celebration of the culture that was preserved and protected by the battle as well as the battle itself.
Right. Now, Botswana are complaining about their history being erased, mostly because they don't keep up, records. They don't, keep their events as they are unfolding in safety, so that for the coming generations they could do. What is it that could be done to document this and make sure that at the end of the day our history is not forgotten?
Well, frankly, there has been a lot of documentation, not to say there can't be more. But what we really, I believe, if I'm going to be honest about it, we need to teach it in schools at primary, secondary, and indeed tertiary level. When I look at Botswana history more broadly, many, many books and articles have been written by indigenous Botswana as well as outsiders over the decades. But some of these books are out of print. And what we can see is that our children are not necessarily reading these books, knowing about these books. The cultural events will help bring this to life, but we need to go beyond the cultural events to also bring these heritage to the classroom and to other daily discussions.
We are wrapping up the conversation, but how do we wrap this up also with, or merge it with the technology that we are living in? We're talking about the whole world moving into digital transformation. How do we get to make sure that we move with our culture, with our history into this,
Well, it's a great opportunity. Already social media is a way of spreading history and heritage. Certainly the event for those, first of all, we hope people will come in large numbers to the event itself, but I'm sure there'll be streaming and other ways to share the event, not only in Botswana, but, globally. But yes, digital technology makes it easier for us to publish. It makes it easier for us to make documentaries. It makes it easier for us to have interactive content in our museums and in our classrooms. So I'm looking forward really to a blossoming of heritage. I know we've got so many talented creatives in this country. Some of them are working on projects. In the past, we had films, but with digital technology, it's much easier to make visual content.
All right. Now we're wrapping up with this. We're talking about our ancestors, sacrificing their lives to liberate us. You earlier on talked about, some people not believing that we have been liberated, but as you've mentioned, we have been. How do we learn as upcoming generation about the ancestors, about their liberation, and what spirit can we live with?
Well, we should enthuse it in our humanities. When we talk about humanity education in Botswana and indeed in the region, it should be humanities that go to our own oral traditions, our maboka, also the documents that we have. We do have indigenous accounts of this war and of this battle. And some of those should be, not just sitting in archives, but be brought out. So celebrations like this can create public awareness. But like I say, some of this can also be institutionalized. I know that the government is overhauling the educational system. They're talking about STEAM, which includes the arts, as well as, science and technology and mathematics and the likes. So this is where we should be enthusing in our arts, our heritage, which includes our historical heritage.
All right. And that is how we come to the end of this conversation. Ramsay, thank you so much for such insights. I believe as BTV will also get to see what will be happening on the 23rd to give Botswana digital content, as you already mentioned. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right. And that is how we come to the end of this conversation. I'm coming right back with the 5 o'clock news.
The students were through again this program. We've managed